Okay, so we simulated our first project. It was about as easy as it could be. We entered a single number in a single cell. Um, we're now going to try to attack something that's a little bit more complicated. So what we're going to imagine is in this area here, this attic, right, which we remember from the video is just kind of an open space, that should be very easy to add insulation to. So we're going to simulate adding insulation just to this back section here of the attic to start. Before we embark on our simulation, I've already gone and saved this as a new file, but I'm going to go here and make a new sheet. So I'm going to click on my baseline sheet, move or copy, and I'm going to create a copy of that sheet. So now I have two of the exact same things to work with, and I'll rename this one Analysis Attic. Again, this is really important to do so that we keep good records of what we're doing and what we're changing and what the original system, the original house was. All right, so to start, this is really easy. So kind of a standard attic insulation depth would be moving from R19 to an R60. So again, that's kind of a standard value for attic insulation. Moving that to R60. So we've been able to do that. You can see when we did that, this number here, the therms per month out that attic is now quite small. So we could keep going up from R60 to maybe R1000. And it gets smaller yet, but that's not actually going to change a whole lot. R1000 is going to be very, very thick. So not actually going to be physical room in that space, even if we filled the whole thing with insulation. So that's why R60 is kind of a good standard. So again, just to see, we'll go back to R19, which is what is currently in there. We say about 3 therms per month. Move that to an R60. Now, we've added insulation, but insulation and weather sealing often go together. So what we should always do, especially until we get used to things, is check the weather sealing estimates. And as we look here, new insulation, so again, a lot of insulation projects come with a weather sealing benefit. Spray foam, the rim joist, no, we didn't do that. Additional attic insulation. So we're estimating a fairly small change if we're just adding insulation on top, and we should be adding a fairly thick amount, say R15, to be able to achieve that insulation. So this is not an exact number, right? These are our estimates, kind of rules of thumb, but let's see what needs to happen to make that change. So we're going to go down to our total reductions, and this is going to be equal to this additional attic insulation number, and I'm going to hit enter. So we've seen a slight change now from air changes per hour of 1.7 down to 1.65. And this is where these kind of simulations can get a little tricky, and we need to use our engineering judgment. We're not making that change across all of the attic as it exists, right? Our attic is about 800 square feet. We have about 200 square feet of one type and 600 square feet of the other, ballpark. So this number is estimated, this 0.5 is estimated if we were to make this change, adding additional insulation to the entirety of the attic. So we only actually made the change to about a quarter or thereabouts of our attic area. So what I'm going to do to try to get a better estimate of what this change will actually do in the real world is I'm going to take this value here and divide it by 4. So again, that's kind of trying to take into account the fact that we did this over about 200 square feet, but there's really about 800 square feet of total area. This is not exact, but it's trying to get me sort of a ballpark number of what I should expect. Now this changes it to a very small effect indeed. And that's because there already was pretty significant insulation there. We're just adding insulation on top. We don't expect that to be a very significant air barrier. It might do a little bit, but it's only a little bit in one small section of the house. So we see a fairly modest change, only about 1.6% for this added insulation in this one location here in Riepma. If we wanted to add insulation to the whole attic space for Riepma, we can go here to attic 2. And I might be tempted to add this. Why don't we change this up to R60 as well? That sounds awesome. But this is actually the main ceiling above the living space, and there may not actually be enough physical space to add that much insulation. If we look, cellulose insulation is about R3.5 per inch. So R60, we're talking about 18 inches of insulation, 1.5 feet thick of insulation. Even if we had spray foam, we need 10 inches of space to add that R60 insulation. So we may not just have, again, that physical space here. So what I'm going to do is estimate that we maybe have enough space for R16 or R19 insulation. That would be about a 6-inch cavity for insulation. So I'll make that change. Because I changed it from 11 up to 19, I'm adding some R value, but probably not tons of insulation, probably not really affecting the air leakage of that second story. So I'm actually not, right, if we look at kind of our rule of thumb here is we should see a change if we're adding about R15. I'm only adding R8. Maybe I'll see some change, maybe not. We could maybe use our judgment on that, but for right now, I'm going to assume maybe kind of a worst case scenario of no additional change to the air changes per hour or no additional change to the leakiness of the home because I'm adding a little bit of extra insulation to a place that already has it. So these kinds of things are not an exact science. Some of it is kind of a feel based on an analysis of what the current space is as well as experience. But that's what I'm going to do to simulate this. And again, if we look up at the heating use, we can compare the heating use now to what it was before we made these changes. So that's how we can do a little bit more complicated insulation change. You can see in this case, we actually changed insulation values in 2 locations. If we wanted to, say, add an additional step where now after the insulation, we've done some caulking and weather sealing, these changes are going to end up becoming additive. So you do one plus the next as we start to build more complicated, more holistic changes that we could make at our location here at Riepma. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a tour of how we can use these spreadsheets to simulate and manage changes to both insulation and weather sealing. Your next step is going to be doing some of these changes on your own. At this point, we're looking for a little bit of experience using the tools and some interesting ideas. We're not yet necessarily looking at a detailed feasibility analysis, right? Like I was talking about, I wouldn't expect to be able to enter in R100 or R1000 because there may not be physical space there. We're not looking for you to make those kinds of determinations yet. We're looking for you to try to simulate different interventions. So best of luck with that. Ask questions and ask for help if you need it.